week's episode of the Python People podcast with me, Guy Bevington, MD of True North Recruitment Group, where we share insights from prominent global technology leaders. And this week, I am honoured to be joined by Carlos Olivet. Carlos, how are you?
Good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Guy.
Good. Well, it's very nice of you to stay. Pleasure to have you on this. It's a very nice day today, isn't it? It's nice, nice sunny Friday afternoon, so it gets you in the mood. But no, it's a pleasure to have you. Thanks very much for being here. And I guess for those people yet to have made your acquaintance, so Carlos, you're the data science manager for Visa, and we got chatting a few weeks back and just talked about, I guess, how an interesting a challenge it is actually to establish a data science strategy and form a data science function within a multifaceted and huge kind of behemoth business like Visa, with just huge levels of data which aren't necessarily always interconnected and always that obvious. So we thought it could be the makings of quite an interesting chat. So we decided to let's do a podcast, and here we are, and the rest is history, as they say. So yeah, I guess before we delve into the nitty gritty and start chatting through things, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of your background, your career to date, and ultimately how you've arrived at where you are today?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Guatemala. I'm Latin American. And I started my career in overall in software development pretty much by accident. I'm an industrial engineer, and I applied for an internship at a Pepsi bottler, and I got it. And it was for process automation. What I didn't know is it was not really for process automation in the factory. It was for process automation in all of the backend processes through software solutions. But I had done coding before and I liked it. So I decided, you know what, it's a great opportunity, great company. And I did my internship there, and then I went on to work with their IT team that became its own company. I worked as an IT consultant for over 3 years, got to work a lot more with the bottler as well as with other companies, some airlines, some financial institutions, as well as some fast food restaurants. A lot of what we did was really try to make things easier for people, try to take away as many steps where there were errors, and also migrate from what you used to have of ugly, gray-looking interfaces that were made for experts in ERP systems on how to input data and how to handle all of that, and rather go into, you know what, the overall websites are evolving, they're looking nicer. This was back in 2013, so user experience was really kicking in into how do we address overall the experience and making sure that every journey is useful. And a lot of companies back home started doing that for their employees, especially in some cases, for example, BPO offices, where other companies are outsourcing the services to them. So for them to make sure that all of their processes are seamless, they're easy to do, and they're easy to train people to do them. That is always key. Along those lines, when we started automating and improving, one of the key questions was, how much are we automating, and where can we know where to automate next? So we started looking at the data and really gathering insights of where were the bottlenecks, where can we identify trends of specific things that we can take out that are a common enemy for a lot of processes. And there came my interest into working into data science. I moved with one of our clients, one of the BPO offices, because they had a lot of things like this. Worked there for a year with projects before coming to London to do a master's in data science here at UCL in London. Decided to stay. I did my dissertation with forecasting sales for Europe for Coca-Cola, a Coca-Cola bottler here in Europe. That earned me a lot of nice messages from all my friends at the Pepsi bottler back home. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Probably couldn't return back to Guatemala.
Yeah, some people had broken hearts, pretty much. But, you know, it's a very interesting opportunity. I did decide that once I finished the project that I had already worked enough with bottling companies, and decided to go into something different and go into the financial space with Visa. And it's where I'm now. Started as a data science manager just about almost 2 years ago. And it's been a great experience really working with such large amounts of data and in such a mature market for the products such as is the UK. And at the same time, you have challenging markets across Europe, for example, Germany, that is still a very cash-based society compared to other countries, really.
Absolutely, yeah. True. It must be because I know obviously Visa was clearly a global company, but I understand that the European element of Visa actually accounts for quite a large portion of business, doesn't it? So it must be quite interesting, I guess, from a level of data point of view, but obviously, like I say, because different countries, different makeups, different currencies to a degree. It must be a very interesting challenge. To talk us through then, since you, and thanks for that, by the way, that's a really interesting story. I'm always amazed to hear people's stories about how they enter into the world of data science, because I guess it's such a relatively newfangled world, isn't it, from a technology point of view? So there's not many kids that come down to breakfast in the morning, mum, dad, I want to be a data scientist. It's usually kind of astronauts and footballers, isn't it? But what I love about the data science world is when people enter into it, very often a lot of people, without putting words in your mouth, but interested to get your thoughts, a lot of people feel like they've really found their passion. They absolutely love it, and they could never kind of and that's why I personally really enjoy recruiting for this field, because half the people we end up placing, we know that they would do this as a, if they weren't being paid as a job, they'd probably still end up doing it anyway, because it's their passion. They just really enjoy doing it. So how have you found that kind of your journey into data science, and what do you love about it?
I mean, to be honest, I started working with data science before really knowing what it was, pretty much. So it was really more around, I think, a year and a half before I came to London, into thinking I want to learn a lot more about this. I want to really not, just solutions that we find here and there that turn out in this direction, but learn more about it. And it was through that kind of research on what's the best masters that can teach me this, and finding, okay, what, this whole goes into data science, and all of these techniques are machine learning techniques and so on. And I think overall it's very interesting how you still up to nowadays, because I'm an engineer, for example, so it's a thing that you get trained for, and there's the engineering faculty, and we do the same for doctors, architects, and so on. It's a career that you start in, and yes, you can specialize yourself. Instead, with data science, you find professionals that later on in their careers go into it. Yes, you have mathematicians and statisticians that they have all the core concepts from it, but I've worked with all sort of different professionals, chemists, physicists. um, for example, here at Visa, we have some astronomy PhD guys that, yes, they have been using machine learning for a lot of their analysis that they do. Obviously, we have countless images of the space. So in order to do image analysis, they have done this kind of work. And eventually it just falls into data science, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing how many different backgrounds do lend, and what I like about it as well is because there's no sort of clear cut background, because it's a rich tapestry, isn't it? A Venn diagram really of computer science, business domain knowledge, and maths and statistical modeling, and I guess data science, that sort of sweet spot in the middle that sits across all those things. And because people enter into it from different worlds, everyone kind of brings a different perspective, don't they, to it, and different strengths to the table. So yeah, that's cool. So going back to the point you were making earlier about Germany being more of a cash-based country, and these sort of different disparities that exist within Europe. Talk us through that journey. What's it been like to kind of work on these types of projects within Visa, and how have you guys sort of gone about implementing your data science strategy?
I think overall, from my perspective, I think it was a huge learning from working as a consultant. You walk in through the door and you have to work in with a clear, a blank state of, yes, you have some knowledge of what this is going to be, but come into it as an outsider with an outsider perspective and start learning about the situation and try to understand what the pain points are, but at the same time, just try to come up with fresh ideas. because it happens also in any facet of life. As an outsider, it's very easy to see problems when something's going on. um, Obviously, it's not a one magic solution. That is one of the things about data science that often gets mislabeled. It's not like, oh, we're going to start apply data science, it's going to be fixed in 3 years.
Yeah.
No, if it's things like this that are deeply ingrained in society and in culture, it is an overall journey of changing them, and overall of offering something better. um, Increasing the value of what is card better than cash. Countries like mine, for example, where crime rates are much higher, we prefer a card because the cash, they can just steal your wallet and take it away. The card, if you still block it, then you're more protected. And if it's a credit card, then you have the insurance and everything. A lot of countries in Europe, I find, for example, security is not at the top of their concern. So a lot of those things, I feel how it loses value a lot of the times. For example, for me, getting a text message every time my card gets used is something so standard that even when I came here, I was surprised that not all banks offer it. And I understand for someone like me, for example, offers like Monzo, Revolut, and so on. Uh, that the first point being that like real-time information on how my card is used is just offers me that sense of security, for example. um, but then you have more, these companies have integrated more into the payment process, and that is what you're supposed to do. The benefit of, cards are more convenient over cash because you don't have to carry all that cash around. That has become so common and so expected, uh, that the maturity of that offer has expired really, and you have to come up with more things. For example, now, yes, we have contactless, for example, which, yes, takes some of the process away from paying with card. um, and now, paying with your phone or watch, whatever you want, you're increasing the value of using your product, you're increasing the whole experience. And that is where we want to come in, and use insights to understand where does that value lie for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really interesting point, isn't it? 'Cause I think companies seem to get quite a lot out of their data science strategy. And actually, and again, going back to the point of why I enjoy data science, because very often it's about how the insights can improve customer experience or solve a business problem. And it tends to be those businesses that recognize why they're doing data science in the first place, i.e. what's the positive impact it's going to actually have on outcome X. They tend to be the ones that succeed more so than, like you said, actually, what's this new data science thing we need to be doing? All right, let's go and hire a few data scientists and sprinkle some fairy dust over it, and hopefully let's see what happens. Those two businesses, they do tend to separate themselves quite often. But with that in mind, I mean, I guess from your perspective and the time that you've been with Visa, which has been a few years now, what have you, what demonstrable examples could you share where you feel that data science has had a direct correlation, direct positive impact on the experience of a customer for Visa, for instance? Have you got any kind of examples or any projects that you found particularly interesting?
I think, overall, for example, one of the best applications that we have of um, really complex data science is in our fraud detection algorithms. So overall, the fact of not getting your card rejected when you want to buy something and understanding all those patterns, and at the same time, obviously, always identifying fraud, um, is such an enriching experience. Because I remember when I came to the UK, I had been here for about 4 months or something, and I got my car from HSBC, and then 2 weeks later or something, it had gone cloned in one of the cash machines in Canary Wharf. So
Right.
someone used, like, I think it was like more than £2,000 worth of, in a car phone warehouse to buy phones.
Oh, God.
So they told me, oh, we're gonna give you the money back. That's fine. We know it was a fraud. And I'm like, okay. And so when is that gonna happen? I was like, oh, we need to reissue your card so you can pick it up at the branch in a week. And then in a matter of 2 weeks we'll return your money. And I was like, you don't. And they told me, oh, do you have a credit card or something against the moment? I'm a student. I came here 4 months ago. Uh, so I spend, the next 3 weeks using my card from back home and paying the international fees on that. Um, and having, because back home I would have to call my bank to tell them, oh, I want to make this transaction. Please don't mark it as fraud because I'm outside the country and stuff like this. So obviously that was a negative experience overall that could have been avoided if, let's say, it was detected um, earlier on. But the whole process has come leaps and bounds, really. If you think about it, when was the last time your card got rejected for no reason at all? Or when was the last time you got a fraudulent transaction just popping up in your card for no reason? Especially now where we go a lot into e-commerce, and that has also been one of the main points of development for companies like Visa. Making the whole e-commerce environment more friendly and making it easier for integration. Nowadays, it's not, you expect every company to have an online page where you can buy and pay them in advance. You wouldn't just order something from a place that then tells you, oh, you need to pay cash to the delivery guy. So all of those integrations and seeing how you can move the ecosystem going forward is what it's really about at this point, because overall the payments themselves is a very mature product now. And it's about enhancing it with external things, as I mentioned, with paying contactless, with fraud detection, obviously also allowing you to pay with, for example, Internet of Things in multiple different places. Being able to pay in the vending machines, for example. I for my life never carry coins, never carry cash, and that was always one of my pain points when I see a vending machine. Sometimes if I'm partying or something at night, not so much anymore. But back then I was like, I have no cash. And when I came here, for example, I started seeing, they're moving a lot of the vending machines to the ones that have their own POS and you can pay contactless. And all of those changes just brings everything into the ecosystem. And you see other companies doing that. For example, one of the best things or the strong points about Apple, for example, is that you get an Apple product and it connects to all the other Apple products. If you have a Mac and you have an iPhone and you have Alexa in your home, then from those three you could start controlling the lights in your house, your speakers, your TV. Everything could be controlled in the same ecosystem. At any point now, if you're already in that place and you decide to buy a TV and it says, not compatible with Alexa, not compatible with Mac, you're not going to buy it, because overall the whole experience has already involved you, and you want to just add into that one rather than move on. It becomes like as if they were to tell you, are you willing to move to another place for this role? The offer has to be really good for you to decide, I'm just going to uproot my life. I'm going to go and look for a new flat. I'm going to go look for, new friends, new places that I like, and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. And to talk about Apple, I mean, I was reading a book on it relatively recently. They are just absolute masters of maximizing customer value insofar as, like you say, once you have one Apple. I mean, I wouldn't call myself an Apple fanboy necessarily. I've got a MacBook a couple of years ago when I started True North, and I'd never go back to a PC now. I absolutely love it, in fairness. But I wouldn't say I profess to be an out and out Apple fan. But then I look actually at how many Apple products I own. You don't even realize I've got like 7 or 8 different Apple products. So they're masters of making it frictionless, aren't they? Really, it's kind of seamless. And I guess that's going back to the point that you were making earlier on about certainly with payments and anything to do with money. Really what you appreciate is a frictionless kind of smooth process, don't you? Purely for customer convenience, because whenever you have anything, I think when anything happens from a monetary perspective, we have any problems with money, it is one of the most frustrating things to resolve, isn't it? Because it's your money at the end of the day, and it's obviously a very highly emotive thing, and often you need that money for other purposes. And like you say, when you have that kind of situation that you've just outlined there, where you're a victim of card fraud, it must be the most frustrating thing. So any processes you can have to improve on customer experience and just make things as convenient as possible for people and as stress-free as possible from a money point of view, absolutely, I can fully see the value in that. So where do you see then, because data science obviously is this huge umbrella, isn't it? It sits across, so many different technologies, disciplines, techniques. And I guess we sort of see three main pillars that sit under data science. As you've got the analytics and insight element of things. You've got maybe more of the data engineering side of things, and actually preparation of data and data pipelines and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got more of the actual statistical modeling, machine learning, algorithmic development. And where do you see, in terms of your experience within these, the kind of greatest wins have taken place in terms of how data science has been applied? Has it just been better analytics, understanding the data better? Has there been quite a big push and advance in machine learning in terms of how that's kind of improved on customer experience? What are you actually sort of seeing as the trends as to where the big wins are taking place for Visa?
Yeah, I would say that, it goes across all aspects, because in one sense, thinking first of the data engineering part, yes, making things easier for data science and data analysts to work is a key part, because obviously you don't want them to go through leaps and bounds to get to data and to visualize it and to work with it. That is one of the main things, and there has been a huge progress over the last few years at Visa to make sure that we have the latest tech stacks, and that we have the best environment to work with data. That has definitely been improving a lot, which often is, companies that are so big, they stagger, they can just decide and, there's a new technology, let's migrate next month or whenever the contract finishes. It's not as easy as that. It's not just something that you can just up and decide. So those changes had luckily in my time been coming. And I think then it's data analytics is something that we have done for a long time, in general, thinking in business. And it's often now undervalued because of data science. And I think it's not really, it shouldn't really be the case. The way I see it is like digging. And yes, you might think, the gold, the real valuable thing is 10 meters on the ground. And yeah, that might be true. At the beginning, you might just find little pebbles and just other things. But in order to get to the goal, you have to take all the ground from above first. You can't just, dig, teleport yourself into the goal and bringing up. So it is a job about understanding your data, really understanding where you are, where you're standing, in order to go beyond. So often we look at it, you can do descriptive analysis, and then from that, looking at all that descriptive, you can get your clear picture. This is where we are. From this we can start planning a strategy. This is our now. Where do we want to take it further? And then you come into predictive. Okay, now we understand. Now we want to start predicting. Is this going to happen this way, or start pushing it that way? Once you're really good at predicting, once you start trusting yourself in that sense, then you can start being prescriptive, really. And that is more of, well, you haven't asked me this, but the data shows that, we should start looking at this. Customers are starting to do this. They're not asking you yet, but they are finding ways of going into this. You could say that, for example, one of the things right now is, for example, everyone used to buy weekly or monthly or so on tickets for either the tube or trains if you commute from outside of London to London. And obviously now everyone's thinking, it used to be worth it, because if I do 5 travels a week, back and forth, 10 total a week, then I would rather buy the monthly pass than pay on every trip, because I have to go to the office. But what happens if you only go to the office 3 times a week? Then it's not worth it. You're not getting the most out of the monthly pass, but still paying daily is still going to be very expensive. So there is where you could start saying, oh, you know what, maybe what we should do is start creating new packages. What would work best based on what we can already know and we have already predicted from before, because we know how customers behave from before. Can we use that basic information with what we know from what's going to happen in the future to try to make that change before it is needed, really?
Yeah, Absolutely, yeah. It's really interesting you say it's not sort of a one approach, one trick pony in terms of how the approach works, and it's really a symbiotic relationship between all those three things that they all enable the other, I guess, which is a very good point. But yeah, it must be fascinating in the world of, because it's as humans, we often think that we are this kind of, godlike organism that where we can't be predicted. Our behaviour can't be predicted, because we're all individuals, and we'll all. But I actually had sort of, I can't remember where it was now, but like a model which kind of just analysed my spending activity on a monthly basis of my current account, and it was unbelievable how predictable I actually was, and how we are as humans in terms of our spending patterns, and just times of the month, what we spend on, and all that kind of thing. And it's there must be some really big insights that you can actually glean from, like I say, once you can really trust the data's right. But you were saying in our first conversation that there's still a lot of data that within companies like Visa, where there's a lot of data that's still, you're yet to kind of get that unification. So for instance, you might have a customer that's got two cards, for instance, but actually we don't know that they belong necessarily to the same person, and that kind of thing. So do you feel that there's kind of a big area, or the next sort of step in terms of where data, how it can involve things for Visa in terms of kind of what that next level of like I say, prescription could be?
Yes and no. So I think we have reached with data science thinking, especially, so in general, all the data science techniques that we do are not new. You probably will find people from working in the 50s and 60s, more in terms of research, that have worked into all of this, and even before that. And they were really the pioneers into discovering that you could, based on following a strict procedure, make assumptions or make predictions based on data. What all that they didn't have was the technology needed. They didn't have the computing power to do it. And now we're doing it. And obviously that has generated a lot of solutions that didn't need to exist. And that is the whole boom from data science. And then we went into a process of, I think I didn't experience it, it's not for my age, but when the internet really boomed and everyone was creating stuff in the internet, and then the whole .NET crash happened. And it's not that the internet died off, and I would say that right now, overall web solutions and how we connect is higher than ever. So it was more, I think, along with data science as well, understanding it's not a one trick does it all, and it's not something that you can just do anything you want with it, or that should do anything you want with it. So one of the reasons, for example, that there's no way for us to know two cards belong to the same person is along with the privacy and ethics that Visa follows under a strict guideline. And it goes into, as well, as you mentioned, if you know everything about a person, it's easy to predict how they behave. Overall, humans, we thrive in routine, whether we like it or not. The pandemic has shown that things that we thought, oh, I don't really like the commute. I don't. Once they're completely taken away, you miss them. And obviously, it is once we realize that we have no other option than us right now, you think, oh, I want my freedom. I want all of the things that I used to be able to do. And then when you think back, even I live near a lot of parks here in London. I didn't used to go to all of those parks as much as I do now. So it's a lie that having that freedom allowed me to do it. I do it now. Um, and it is a lot about we put ourselves in routines because it's the easy thing for us to do. So it's a lot of whether we should be going into that, and should data science go into that. And the other thing is understanding there's often a lot of value put into what we can know about an individual. But from the statistics and from where data science usually gets its most value from, it's from the aggregation, really. So the way, for example, if you tell me, if you give me every information about you to train a model, or if I rather know a little bit from every person in the UK, I'd rather know a little bit from every person in the UK. And then I can predict a specific thing, yes, apply to you or to any individual. And it's because in general we behave in very similar ways. So we behave in a specific distribution, you know. So in a lot of the examples is, for example, trying to predict someone's height based on a lot of things. If I know everything about you, I'm not likely going to guess your height if that's the only thing I don't know. If I know the height of everyone in the UK and maybe their age, I'm very likely to get it right
Mm.
because you're most likely to be about average height. You know, you might get, oh, you know, we got this wrong because actually this person is in the world record Guinness for being the shortest man in the world, or the tallest. Um, but overall, it's about, again, it's a numbers game. You know, as long as you can get the largest mass and get it right for them, then that's what you want. And that's why learning from the volume of data that we have or that other companies have is the key factor, really. One of the I would say one of the key things that companies have begun understanding is it's not the same to say, oh, you know, I do gather data and you can start doing data science on it. A lot of companies, I think, started that way. And once people came in and themselves without, you know, having that prior experience, I think it's not the same to say, you know, this library has a lot of information and you can, you know, all the books are indexed and everything is in there and you can go to here and you can easily, there's a system to finding the book they want. That is not the same that telling you, oh, you know, there's a warehouse with books. It's very big. We get them once a week and we just throw them in there. And when it gets full, we just use a bulldozer to push them forward to the back so we can throw the new ones in.
Mm.
And it's that, you know, when you walk into that warehouse, it's like, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot here that we can use. You have any idea how long it's going to take me to find the book I want? It might be never, really,
Mm.
because the quality of what comes in, it's going to be the quality that comes out. And that is also something that we must understand as well for bias. That right now, I think we live in a time that it's finally recognizing that there's a lot of biases, that we live in a biased world. We
Mm.
don't live in a fair world for everyone, in any sense of the world.
No.
Um, Society is shaped based on really old systems of society, um, that have led it to be that way. And it's something that you have to understand from the data, um, that because the data has so far has shown that something is true, doesn't mean that it should be true,
Mm.
or that is in fact correct.
Yeah. Mm. Absolutely. How do you allow for bias in, yeah, have you got any kind of demonstrable practical examples of yeah, from in your kind of previous projects in terms of making sure that yeah, that bias is being allowed for?
So thinking back, I've never worked with extremely sensible data in that sense, but just thinking situations that had happened, for example, um, you know, algorithms that have been tried to be developed to determine whether someone's guilty or not. And turns out algorithms perform great in that sense. But then you look at what data they use, and if you remove race from the algorithm performs much, much poorly. And then you think, really, is race important to defining whether someone's guilty of a crime? Why is it more important than all the other factors?
Mm.
That is what is shown in the data, but that is obviously not true. What we have, for example, previously in working in countries like mine, or working in multiple countries in Latin America, is understanding the cultural differences that we have and how we purchase. Um, and that is something that we often have to take into account because the purchasing power is different. Same happens for Visa. For example, if I want to identify, you know, who are the high spenders in our data, if I just take that across Europe, I'm likely gonna end with a lot of people from Monaco, a lot of people in Switzerland, a lot of people in London. But is it true? Could it be that I have some people, for example, in other areas, in other countries, that for their region they're actually spending a lot of money, and I should still be targeting them with premium products because they do buy them. It's just the fact that they are cheaper in their countries.
Yeah.
Like if you ask me, for example, in my country, minimal salary is about £220. So if you're making £1,000 and you just sell it somewhere in my country, that's a lot of money.
Mm.
And instead here you might think, oh wow, living on on £1,000 salary a month in London, you really have to make ends meet. So it's understanding all those differences that are underlying in the data and be able to identify them, and also to catch them in yourself. Other algorithms that you see, and you can test that, and it's incredible how deep it is in products that we use every day. I think it was in Thai, they don't have genders for their personal pronouns. So, for example, he drives and she drives is written exactly the same. And if you put into Google Translate just that he or she and verbs, it's very interesting how it translates them. He drives, she cooks. He leads, she cleans, and stuff like this. And you think, how come this thing just has been putting by gender according to the verb?
Mm.
And it's probably because it's probably trained on a lot of books. It's probably trained on a lot of official translations. And yes, if you look historically in books, the person cleaning is probably a woman. But that doesn't mean it is true. That doesn't mean it is now.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? How the previous history and the structures that we have must still inform a lot of how things are predicted moving forward. But like I say, it doesn't mean it should. It doesn't mean it's right. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So that kind of argument sits within when you talk about AI and what is intelligence, and intelligence really is allowing for it's allowing for context, isn't it? Really, because you've obviously got we've got computational power now, where from that singular aspect, all right, computers and software, it is more intelligent than humans in terms of processing power and how it can utilize data to spot connections. But like you said, without taking the context into a situation, like say between country to country and culture to culture, there isn't really a huge amount of intelligence there, if that makes sense. There's black and white, cold, hard facts, but it doesn't really infer much real world useful meaning, does it?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting to know. But yeah, I mean, the bias element of things, it's obviously something that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. You kind of just are born into a world where you don't necessarily recognize it a lot of the time. But I suppose most recently, it's one of those things where the bad algorithm has reared its head. Just thinking back to how the exam results were declared in the UK during coronavirus, off the back of an algorithm, and how that was basically exactly the situation you're mentioning now, isn't it, in terms of school performance and geographical location and all that kind of thing, and just how this algorithm essentially was sending some kids down the river purely on the basis of
where they live, pretty much.
Yeah. It's I think that's kind of for the first time with a lot of people probably raised the question of bias in a very obvious way. Yeah, it's a very interesting place. But I guess on that note, I mean, just in closing question, what are you most excited about now in the landscape of AI, machine learning, and data science? Where do you feel kind of most passionate, and there's some really exciting stuff kind of yet to happen?
I think a lot about it is really down to the kind of tools that we can use and how we can explain. So, for example, for quite some time we had the issue that if you want to do the most complex algorithm that you could, if you want to get exactly the best result possible, neural networks, and I'm sure it's a buzzword that you have heard, oh, deep learning and neural networks, and they're definitely useful. And for the most kind of the most complex kind of algorithms, they define really what is pushing forward the bar into how much we can be accurate. And it's understandable if you want an algorithm that identifies types of birds based on examples. Yes, that will deliver the best possible performance. But it's also to understand we cannot rely on just neural networks because they're a black box. Yes, I don't care how the algorithm knows whether, this is an eagle and this is a hawk. I don't care about that. But would you say that it's okay for an algorithm that you cannot possibly explain in rational terms to have determined the school grades? Would you think that, the Ministry of Education could have come and said, oh, that's what the algorithm says. I don't know why. It just does. Take it. That would have not been possible. And nowadays, because of the new technologies that we have and how we process with GPUs, for example, we can use other type of models that are still interpretable, that are not nearly as performance efficient as our neural networks, but that because of the technology that we have now and the capabilities, we can still use them. You don't have to go into that dark magic sort of. You can still use explainable things that you can show people, and you can be very, I think, very transparent about it. We have gone past the point where people are just willing to accept that technology and technological advancements work in ways that they just don't understand. I think there's a lot more awareness. There's a lot more, for example, now people are more aware of, oh, what is this company going to use my data for? Well, whenever you install an app on your phone, you're more aware of, oh, why it doesn't want access to my contacts if this is, I don't know, a game, for example, or something. Why is it doing that? People will not just take the benefit without thinking back into it. And that is a healthy thing, I think, to be concerned genuinely and to want information and transparency on why things happen. I think, for example, we would all love more transparency in a lot of things, like how is the government run, why are government decisions made, into all aspects. Now more than ever, where information and news are in everyone's pocket, then it is important to have that. We cannot just go into things that we don't understand, that we just because we like the outcome.
Yes, absolutely. It's true. I think it's a great point around it. Data is is a very emotive topic now, isn't it? It's a very emotive word to people, and it is very prevalent in today's society. I mean, literally every time you turn on the TV, someone's always talking about data, and obviously you've got the this equation I'm sure everybody's aware of now about how every year that passes, the amount of data being written per year is more than the rest of history from the year previous, and it's just the exponential rate of how data is being amassed is just absolutely mind-boggling. And I think people are aware that there is a real power in data, but with that, I think people are starting to wake up to the looking for ratified sources of truth, like you say, and not just expecting or accepting what the data says. And having a conversation with my other half the other night about talking about kind of AI and we were talking about deep fakes actually, and how that whole concept scares the living hell out of me, because you think about fake news and how
that is literally an easy way of making fake news.
Yeah, how misappropriation happens off the back of fake news, and just how dangerous it can be, where because we're as humans, like say, seeing is believing, and often if we see something, we kind of believe it's true. And in a deep fake situation, there has to be a way of policing it, because otherwise it's just going to be absolutely out of control.
Oh, yeah,
world wars could start overnight, couldn't they?
Yeah, and it's incredible the amount of lengths that you have to go. I think at some point it happened when nobody knew what Photoshop was, for example, and very poorly altered images were passed as, oh, that has to be true because there's a picture of it. How else would you have a picture of it? And it's happening now. And yes, for example, you mentioned deepfakes. Recently, I've been reading a lot of articles of misuses that there have already been of deepfakes, of people using it for blackmail. This is obviously at more personal levels and more individuals in society. But for the same reason, multiple companies, I think IBM is one of the forefronts, already have an algorithm to analyze whether something is a deepfake or not. And it's incredible the level of detail that it has to go. So it says that it analyzes the reflection of light in your eyes. So if someone were to use your face in another video, they analyze if the reflection of light in your eyes matches how the lighting on the rest of the video is. And then you think, I can't even tell that. I'm not.
No.
It'll probably take an expert in photography to be like, oh, yeah, his face doesn't look like it really matches the overall lighting because it's coming from like.
But I mean, the flip side of that is if there's an algorithm that can detect that, how it knows it's not a deep fake, then in the same way,
It will improve the fake.
someone's going to be working on a program to make sure that the light reflects in the right way, aren't they? It becomes a chicken and egg situation. But in a way, I mean, unless you've got access to that algorithm, the majority of people are just going to take it as verbatim, aren't they? Because we're all like tuned into our mobiles and we see videos all the time online, and often you wouldn't even think to even question if it was a deep fake, would you? You just kind of go with it,
Yeah.
I guess.
And it's about, I think, being more inclusive. And I think that's why the whole movement, for example, with ethical hacking has become a thing. You would think that overall hacking is a crime. But that's why now you have ethical hacking, because they're encouraging these people to come forward or to accept them coming forward. There are multiple instances, for example, of security breaches or hackings of multiple devices like PlayStations and so on, where the people that originally developed it, they have come to Sony or companies with a similar saying, hey, I detected that, just me and my friend, we were able to hack your system and make it play games for free or similar stuff. So this is a security breach for you, actually. So we are here, it's documented and we're giving it to you. And companies previously, they didn't care. And, so this guy just tells, they did it out of their goodness of their heart and just for pure curiosity and told the company. But then you tell the next guy, he's like, I'm gonna get money out of this.
Mm.
And that's just it. So you have to embrace that community community value, and it has shaped a lot, for example, on how we now work with open source technologies. And you see it. I work at companies where I remember one company was moving into open source solutions rather than monolithic ERPs that cost millions. And you would tell them, and he would get into a very heated argument saying, I think it's, let's say, not smart to think that a bunch of developers around the world are going to do something better than what the company has been paying £1 million a month to get. And from his logic, you can understand it. A multi-million-dollar company based everywhere in the world with clients among a portfolio of the biggest companies in the world, and then you tell someone, oh, there's something free that's actually kind of better. It does the same, but it's much lighter and always totally free. They're gonna think that's crazy because good things are not free. But really, in terms of development, in terms of technology, the whole community really pushes things forward in a way that is unimaginable. And again, comes into the best companies might have 100 developers working really hard into making the best product, but the community has millions working out on their free time and out of their curiosity, exploring with no deadlines, with no, cares for ROI. Is this a project that's going to deliver money, so I should invest time on it? And no, and that is how technologies like R and Python have evolved so much into having multiple libraries that do so much of the things. Um, there's a lot of the work that has been done for other data scientists, and it's our job also to give that back as well. If you do something that's really useful and you think, oh, I wish that this had already been something out that I could take out of the bag and just start using, and then you put it out for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things I've been most impressed about in the force of the open source community, and because pretty much the majority of my career, kind of the last sort of 10 years before I started True North, was focused mainly around the Microsoft domain. So C# and .NET, and the difference, you kind of when I established True North, obviously I couldn't work with any of the clients I'd worked with previously. So I kind of evaluated the whole of the tech landscape and thought, okay, well, where's the most interesting place to kind of set up shop, and kind of landed wholeheartedly on data science and software engineering, and the kind of core thread that ran throughout both of those was mainly Python as the kind of primary programming language. And it's just been incredible on that journey to see how Python's like meteoric rise to success over the last few years, and I think largely, like you said, it is down to this sort of movement now, and the open source community, which just seems to be exponentially expanding and getting behind tools and building out some incredible technology. Makes it a really exciting place, isn't it? Yeah, well, it's absolutely fantastic speaking to you today, Carlos. I really enjoyed the chat, and definitely got the hamster turning in the wheel for me and thinking about some really interesting stuff. So, thank you, thank you very much for being with us here today, and look forward to keeping in touch and seeing you move on to even bigger and better, great things in your pursuits at Visa.
Thank you, guy.
Great, take care and have a great weekend.
Same to you. Cheers.
Bye.